This is Tacos Live with Jay and Jeff. Boys, how are we doing?
Fired up, Brandon. We're here with you and a great guest. We got Jeff Solomon in the queue. Jeff, what's cooking, brother?
I'm all fired up. I love Taco Tuesday Live here on Promo Corner with an amazing guest, Jeffrey P. Jacobs. And we're gonna this guy is like he's a Promo Corner superstar, isn't he, Brandon?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. He's been writing blogs for us since I'm pretty sure the beginning of Promo Corner,
Since
and just
12.
making sure that the entire industry is up to spec and doing the right things when it comes to products. And we will be getting into that. But before we get into that, let's go ahead and pop up those tacos for the gram. I've got my standard confetti one. There we go. What do you got down there, Mr. Jacobs?
So I look at tacos as an opportunity to get some leftover opportunity in there too. So I went ahead and got a full piece of pizza in there, and then a little bit of last night's compound chicken, So I'm serious. God. Plus I got my display thing here too. So I didn't want to miss out.
Rocking the tacos. I love it. That's hardcore.
Okay, did we get the picture already?
I'm pretty sure we got the picture. I'm sure there is a picture.
But that's a first. Right. We've got a pizza taco,
tacos down.
Pizza taco, and a compound taco. I mean, I'm like, what? I love this creativity. I knew this show was going to be spicy.
So one of the things, Jay, I mean, your hat game is so strong. It's not, I can't do it, but I went ahead.
Look at that.
And, so I got my Taco Tuesday hat here.
He is ready to rock.
I wanted to make sure that I kept up, with oops, hang on. Get it on straight here. There we go. Okay, now I'm ready for tacos.
Now he's official.
With Jay and Jeff.
This is legit. It's the Tacos with Jay, Jeff, and Jeff show.
I feel left out because I do not have
Brandon,
a J
you
name,
can hang out anytime, man.
So guys, we are going to be watching these guys live as they do talk about this stuff. We do have the messaging over on the side, just like normal on Facebook. If you have any questions for these guys, any comments for these guys, go ahead and throw it over there, and I will make sure that we will get to them near the end. But I am going to jump off here and let the entertainment and education begin. We'll see you guys at the end for a bite of those tacos.
Love it. Thanks,
Sounds
Brandon.
Good.
Well, listen, we are thrilled. Jeff, isn't this pretty exciting? We got Jeff Jacobs on the show.
I've been looking forward to having Jeff on the show for a long time. And Jeff is one of the few people in the industry, you can relate to this, Jay. Well, you're more, anyway, who gets me, And our best times at a trade show, seriously, ASI Power Summit, cigar by the fireplace, out by the pool, those were our, some of seriously my best industry times, which speaks to my industry experience, really. Cigars.
Well, I think it's super cool, and the fact that you two do connect over cigars and by the fireplace. You like to slow it down a little bit, keep it mellow, and that's good because you got to balance me out a little bit. As I start to get a little louder and a little more punk rock, you guys can bring me back down to reality. But let's dive into the show because we've got great information to share. Yes. We have the best guests I know to talk about some of these things. And so, Jeff, if you don't mind, Mr. Jacobs, we're going to share my screen. And what it's going to do is it's going to pop up like this so that we can get a great take. Speaking of cigars, if you want to reach out to Jeffrey P. Jacobs, you might as well just watch everything he does on Promo Corner because it is pretty fabulous, I might say.
Thank you.
And it makes me wonder, I'm a little suspect of your writing skills. Like you might even have a ghostwriter. It's so good. It's that good.
That's too kind. That's very, very kind of you. It does go through an editing process, though. I have to be honest.
Well, listen, if I don't have an editor process, I need all the help I can get. So at this point, but listen, let's talk a couple about your bullet points of who you are and what you're doing and why you're here. Because when I started thinking about this topic and the topics we're about to uncover, I was like, okay, we have to have Jeff Jacobs with us, the expert in building brands for more than just a couple of decades. You've worked in commercials, television, Hollywood, publishing, promo, director of brand merchandise for Michelin. That's a big deal, which is why I love this photo. I can't wait for you to talk a little bit more about Michelin and being their ace over there. And that's what your introduction to our industry is, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right.
And then retired as an executive director. This is kind of a big deal too. So let's not think about your connection with Quality Certification Alliance and having that be a dedicated, I guess I would say, in terms of a supplier service, maybe, is that the right way to frame that, Jeff?
Yeah, so it was really an independent nonprofit certification process. We worked with suppliers to try to help them bring safe products into the industry. So it was really the only, and unfortunately, kind of a victim of the pandemic, and that from a sourcing standpoint, the board of directors decided to fold that operation last year. But it was the only independent nonprofit that really focused on the protocols necessary to keep safe product coming into the industry.
Gotcha. I did not know that had since gone the way of some of the other retired businesses that have struggled. I didn't know that, so that's kind of a bummer for me. I guess you're sharing some sad news, because I really thought that was a critical service that our industry needed.
Well, don't get me wrong, there are a lot of suppliers that are doing well internally and focusing really on sourcing responsibly. Being safe is not inexpensive. And so I think the several of the organizations just decided to bring it in-house, because like everything else during the pandemic, everybody was looking at a way to be more efficient.
Well, I hope that they've read some of your articles, listened to some of your inspirational information about safety and about compliance and quality control and all of that, because when I do think of you, and I have to tip my cap to Jeff Solomon, because he has been your advocate as an advocate for consumer product safety for quite a while. This guy, every time the subject comes up, we got to talk to Jeff Jacobs. We got to talk to Jeff Jacobs. And I'm like, all right, cool. So all of these issues surrounding compliance, surrounding corporate social responsibility, these are things that you gratefully, thankfully, these are the things that you're known for in our industry. So that's why we're pretty jacked up to have you.
So thank you for all that. And thank you, Jeff Solomon, for constantly being such, and you share a lot of my articles on LinkedIn, and I see a lot of it on Twitter and certainly on Facebook. So to both of you, thank you. And thank you for having me today, to be here with real studs of the industry.
Oh, wow. Listen, now you've gone too far.
We've not been called that before.
Now you've gone a little too far, but your taco game was very strong, Jeff J.
So, I was hoping today we could kind of come at this from an end user perspective. Because yes, I've focused on brands all my life, but my exposure was really with brand merchandise at Michelin. It was a worldwide effort, and when you think about it, and just the slides there, we tried to bring the Michelin Man to life, and we actually operated a store, a consumer-facing retail store, 8 different websites. Sold a lot to our employees and our dealers, and all of that really, when you think about a brand that is of premium placement, an expensive brand, and tires, think about it. To me, I always thought about buying tires, even as a consumer. I mean, that's like going to the dentist, really. I mean, who wants to go and be in that environment and spend all that money? And after you've done that, you really don't want to hear from your tire manufacturer again anytime soon. Let's face it. So brand merchandise was an excuse. It truly was. It was a way to speak to consumers who were not currently in market. And when you have 100 years worth plus of art of the Michelin Man, and you think about the way he's changed sizes and looks, and he used to smoke cigars in my bicycles and things that really don't today, probably you don't think of it as using to promote a tire company. But, the affinity that we could develop for the Michelin Man through products, that was a great way to speak to consumers that were not currently in market. And so that was really the whole idea, developing affinity for a product that really, you're just not going to go out and hug your tires. That's just not going to happen.
No, but I would go out and hug the Michelin Man, especially if he was hanging out with some high-end chefs who look like they're about to whip up some wicked tacos.
Well, and
looks like he's into tacos to me.
And you guys know that the Michelin brand, a lot of people aren't as aware as they might be. It's a very strong game in Europe. Michelin has for right at more than 100 years been busily rating restaurants and hotels, and it started in 1920 actually. When the original Michelin brothers said, there were only about 6,000 cars running around in France at the time, but obviously they weren't going to stay running all the time. So when your car was broken down, you needed a place to stay or a place to eat. And so originally the whole idea was to help people that were traveling. And there actually was a group of individuals that you could write a letter at that time to Michelin and say, look, I'm going from Lyon to to wherever I'm going and get me an itinerary. And you would get back a handwritten itinerary of what roads to take. You might not know this too, but when the soldiers landed on the beaches of Normandy at D-Day, they all had Michelin maps actually in their pockets because the Germans had switched all the easy for me to say, road signs around.
Yeah.
And so they actually used Michelin maps to help find their way as they landed on the beaches.
I didn't know that. And that's timely because we just finished up Memorial Day. We, as many know, there's always the band of brothers seems to be playing 24/7 during that weekend. And I've watched several of those episodes and you know, my father-in-law recently passed away, and he was buried at the National Memorial Cemetery in Arizona. And so to walk out that morning and to see literally, I'm not exaggerating, tens of thousands of flags, it's touching. Not to take away from your story, but that is a really cool fact. I did not know that. And I think it's impressive that you are the collector of this trivia, Mr. Jacobs.
Well, you know, I enjoyed 13 years there and had the opportunity to travel, you know, for work. And, you know, when you think about it, you know, and even licensed product, you know, a lot of the big boxes right now and the clubs, you know, all are selling Michelin wiper blades. That's a brand. They're frequently called the same as a popular passenger car. So they've had Pilot and they've had other brands of wiper blades, but those aren't promotional products. Those are licensed products.
Right.
And really what we found and this whole thing is that, you know, we're kind of going to circle back around here again, but it's about protecting the brand. You know, when you put your name out there and put it, whether it's on wiper blades or T-shirts or hats or bobbleheads or whatever they're out there, you know, you're putting yourself out at a degree of risk, because even if that product has been received free, when it fails, the brand name has failed. So for me, you know, of course, over the time we did thousands of ballpoint pens and markers and all sorts of stuff. And you can imagine, you hand this to a person and they stick the pen in their pocket and the pen immediately leaks and ruins their shirt. And so it would have been better if you didn't hand them that pen ever. So things like that, or you get a linen bag. You know, when we started testing bags, we were thinking about, well, what's it made of and what ink is it decorated of? But in the beginning, we never really asked the question, well, how much stuff can you put in that bag? So if it has a 10-pound limit or a 20-pound limit or whatever it had, that's quality too, you know, because if somebody loads that bag up and they lift it by the handles and it breaks and everything falls through and you lose it, then having the Michelin brand on that bag really wasn't very valuable. In fact, it was less than valuable.
Less than valuable. That's such a good point. Jeff Solomon, you've talked about this in the past about these. And so I love hearing Jeff Jacobs from the perspective of the buyer thinking about these things. And I think as a distributor or as a you know, branded merchandise dealer, what counselor or advocate or whatever we call ourselves these days, a promo freak, whatever, that we need to have those conversations. We need to get involved, right? Isn't that something that Jeff Solomon, you would recommend that strategy session happens?
Well, yeah, when a company puts their logo on a product, it better be a good quality product. And as we will go through here in this session, what's more important right now to many of the most savvy buyers, they care about how that product is made, whether it's responsibly sourced, the the environmental impacts of it. That wasn't a thing a few years ago, but it is now. And the savvy distributor that's a huge factor as they're dealing with savvy buyers. Now there's a lot of people out there, hey, just give me the biggest, cheapest, or just give me the cheapest crap I can find. There's plenty of those people out there. But that's not where the big quality business is anyway. If you want to do business with a quality company, you need to position yourself properly. And that's what we're talking about here.
It is. And I think that's the transition. You saw the slide pop up for a minute. And this was something that Jeff Jacobs had shared online. I saw it first on LinkedIn, and I had heard of the book, but I still haven't read it, but I need to read this. I think all of us probably need to inform ourselves and read this. But what an amazing story. And I know Jeff Jacobs, we don't have a half hour to really dive in, but as we transition into this next part of our show, tell us a little bit about what we're looking at here, because I'm not sure if these were images from the book or images that you found or images that other people had online that you reshared, but man, these are powerful images, and this seems to be a powerful book.
So, when we started thinking about it, and fortunately, Michelin didn't have any missteps in promotional products in the US, but, we had a couple of problems. We had a child safety seat that we ended up having to recall over 100,000 of them because they were built to German standards when they were marketed in the UK. Some of our colleagues in China decided they wanted to do a seat heater for use in China that was never even tested. So we had thousands of these out here that were getting a little too warm. So the managing partners at the time basically said, we get this idea. You're trying to develop affinity, you're trying to speak to out-of-market consumers, but you're risking our brand. You're putting the name and 100 plus years worth of equity at risk. And so that's kind of when I'm thinking about approaching this, I'm talking about really the object of the discussion today is protecting the brand. And secondarily, because I think our industry is only now coming around slowly but surely to the idea, and I think it can be driven by end users, that sustainability and responsible sourcing can actually be a sales advantage. If you embrace it up front, you're going to be one of the few that are actively doing that. It just isn't happening yet in the industry.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant, Jeff, that it's an advantage to that team to take this on and to be the leader in that space. I love what you just said.
So you flipped the slide up there very briefly, and if you can drop that one
let's
back
go
up.
back.
This is a book that it's out just recently, end of May, 1st of June, and it's just absolutely dramatic. The author Maxime Badat there traveled to Ghana and went to one of the world's largest a literally burning pile of garments, primarily from the United States. When you think about recycling and you talk about our industry and all the soft goods that we sell, and that's the author there on the left, standing on top of this pile of burning garments, many of them fast fashion, as our industry is heading that way. But what happens when you talk about trying to recycle that product? We can't recycle our way out of our problems with soft goods.
That is such an important, let that land. Jeff Solomon, are your ears open? Did you hear what he just said?
Yeah. So
we cannot,
it's not recyclable in any way. The apparel.
Yeah. Well, even if it is, I think the mountain's too big, like you said, Jeff.
Yeah,
we can't recycle ourselves out of it.
Well, I think this is the land of good intentions. I mean, all of us do it. You get to the point where you're in that closet and you're making your trip to Goodwill, and you figure that you're going to give these garments a second life, and someone's actually going to, use them and stretch them further. But the reality is that because of fast fashion and, the way it's being embraced, there is way, way, way much more clothing available, used clothing, than a market's in place. And the problem is that really, it's a matter of, you think purchasing this or that, but the most sustainable thing is to just not buy it again anyway. And I know our industry is trying to sell more and more, but reality is when you're talking to your clients, let's talk about a higher level of quality of that garment that will last longer, and so it's not added into that pile of burning trash.
Better is better, and it's going to last longer for the person who is the recipient. They're less likely to pass that on, or like you said, because they have good intentions, they're going to give it to a homeless shelter or Goodwill or some of the thrift store where, I don't know what the numbers are, Jeff, you may know these, but it's minuscule. It's in the single digit percents that actually get recycled and reused. So what do you do with the rest of it?
There are more than 1 billion pounds every year of garments like this that are headed towards the landfills, or such a small amount of it is actually desirable enough to be used by other folks. And so it doesn't make any sense at all to me to, we're manufacturing halfway around the world. that product comes over to us and we use all the resources and lay down the carbon footprint to get it here. And then it's used just a couple of times and then quickly disposed. And guess what? We use all that energy to send it back over there again, to have it into a landfill or burning trash or wherever it ends up. Such a small portion. You know, the absolute best message that I can give is to not buy it again. You know, buy it right the first time, and for our industry, sell it right the first time, and then not contribute to this kind of problem.
To this wasteland. When you see those pictures, I mean, they're dramatic on purpose, but I saw them and was blown away. So whether we're looking at the author in Ghana standing on this burning pile of trash and apparel, or whether we've all seen these giant, for miles, floating plastic. What do they call those, Jeff? They call them the plastic. I can't.
So you know, the great Pacific plastic reef is what you're looking on the right hand side there. And you know, when you think about this, you know, since the beginning of plastic, back in time a little bit, but there's been something over 9 billion tons of plastic that actually has been produced, and 5 billion of that is in a landfill somewhere or in the environment or floating around in the Pacific. You know, somewhere between 5 and 13 million tons of plastic are floating around in the ocean right now. And the problem with it, you know, plastic never really degrades. So what we're seeing there floating on the surface is only a small part of what we're talking about the problem being, because plastic never really goes away. It degrades and goes into microplastics, and the microplastics go into the water, and that water ultimately ends up in the marine life and ultimately ends up in where we are. So it's you know, to me, from an action standpoint, not only am I interested in trying to limit single-use plastic in our industry and what we're selling to our end users, but it's also something that I'm concerned about ourselves, literally every day. You know, there just are so many things that are affected negatively when we ingest microplastics.
Well, and I was really taken. Thank you for sharing that. When I saw the slide, the info that you sent me, I mean, I was like, wow, it was an eye opener for me. I had no idea it was this much. Like when you quantify it and you put it in a graph and you say, here's the total plastic from 2016, and it's only gone up since then, sadly. You know, here's what our country's doing and other countries are doing, and you know, we've got to turn the corner. It shouldn't be up for debate. It should be something that everybody works on, because the next slide, when I see who the worst polluters are in terms of brands, in terms of countries, to tie this back to what you said earlier, Jeff Jacobs, about how your brand at Michelin, you've got equity of 100 years. You don't want to risk it. I look at Coca-Cola, and I'm like, man, they must be in a panic, because this is information that's out everywhere. And it's not just Coca-Cola, Pepsi and Nestle and Unilever and all the rest of them. And there is this big push right now, correct me if I'm wrong, either of you, Jeff, that the end buyer is more aware, more informed, and more sensitive to this than ever before.
So what I find interesting about this research, and how do you get those numbers, and how do you find out that Coca-Cola has, you know, almost 14,000 different products that's being found out there? It's actually done kind of by hand. There's World Cleanup Day, and they ask the folks that are picking up the items to quantify and specify what the products are. And so, for example, Red Bull has been #1 in the Netherlands right now. They've got the most pollution that's being put out there. But just if I can just go to the notes here. So worldwide, Coke produces 167,000 plastic bottles every minute. I mean, that's just crazy. I mean, to me, I can't even put my arms around, you know, how much that is every day. I mean, literally, you're talking about taking a full garbage truck full of plastic into the water supplies literally every minute. So it's hard to fathom, you know, from a single-use plastic standpoint. And that's kind of what I hope our discussion does, is to get people thinking in terms of the numbers are huge.
Yeah,
Absolutely
yeah,
huge.
Well, you got me thinking about it, and I'm normally stuck on tacos. So,
Well, I want to jump in here because for the distributors that are watching, this is your opportunity to sell bottles. I mean,
Jeff,
drinkware
what is that you're holding right there?
and they could sell tacos with gin Jeff bottles or from our friends
Or a base camp bottle.
Or a base camp bottle from our friends in Sweden. But this is the win. Obviously, drinkware is a huge category in our industry, but also this idea, like I kind of cringe. I have to say, I confess, we were watching a TV show. I won't even say what it was. They were on it was one of the yacht below deck.
Hey, you were you were just about to say. I'm not going to tell you what it was, and then you told.
Okay, but it's below deck. It's a yacht, and the reason why that's important is I think these cruise ships that are on the water, they're like huge polluters. I know these cruise ships, they just dump the crap, in the ocean, because I've seen it. And, but anyway, this was one of the earlier shows, season 1, and they all had plastic bottles. And Lorraine goes, my wife's going, they're using plastic bottles? And we thought about it. We go,
yeah,
where are those bottles going? Why don't they all have, below deck with tacos, but whatever. But I think the mindset needs to change, and our industry will benefit by going, don't use plastic, use bottles.
Well, I think that's what Jeff Jacobs is. No, you're on point. I think that's what Jeff Jacobs is really trying to remind us and teach us and inspire us to be aware. There are substitutional products that you can sell that are going to be better, that are not going to contribute and be on the worst polluter list. So isn't that part of your point, Jeff, is that we can do both things? We can still be a proactive sales company. We just can make a better choice for ourselves and for the brands we serve. Would that be fair to say?
So, I mentioned kind of when we started, this is an issue of good intentions. And I know personally, because we try to recycle certainly here at home. But think about it. I know you've done this. You're standing there and you're at the recycle bin, and it's easy. If you've got an aluminum can, you toss it in, there's a pretty darn good chance that's going to get recycled. But there are so many plastic products that have, the number code there on the bottom of it. And your community may not be the same as my community, as whether or not number 4 is recyclable, number 7. So you know what? You just look at it and you think about it just for a second, and you just toss it in there. And that's kind of what I'm talking about in terms of, I'd love to see the industry think a little bit more about it, but I'd really love for all of us individually. I mean, we can make a difference if we think positively about more than good intentions. Let's make sure that A, we make some purchases that make better sense, and B, let's try to find some way to be mindful. And I don't care if it's the manufacturers or the distributors or us individually. End of life cycle on these products is what we're talking about here. What happens? Right. And you know what? There is a company in the industry focused. The company is part of Grossman Marketing called Swag Cycle, and I've stayed in contact with them over the past year, written a couple of columns that include them, and they're doing some really good work. They're just getting started. They're just focused on our industry, and most of the things they're doing are helping with donations. So, I know from the days at Michelin, we would end a campaign, a product would change, a brand look would change, and we'd have leftover goods. And it was a real challenge to find something to do. Well, Swag Cycle has actually been doing a pretty good job of functioning repurposing of that product. So rather than destroying it or trying to recycle it, and they do have lots of connections for recycling, but they're really focusing on making donations. So if you could find, a group, homeless folks, any youth organization, anything that might be able to use those t-shirts or hats or sweatshirts or whatever, then that truly is a way to stretch the end of life cycle on that product. It is getting a bona fide, additional use. It isn't best intentions of stuffing everything in the Goodwill bag and let somebody else worry about what really happens to it.
No, you're right. You nailed it. Thinking about this now out loud with you, good intentions are just that. And we need to move past that. We need to get a little bit more proactive with the choices that we make and those that we can support in our industry. So again, I just have to flash this one more time because let's call this the list of shame. You don't want to be on this list for a couple of reasons. One, I do believe that this is the kind of thing that is going to have a negative impact on brands. Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, Nestle, Unilever, Mondelez, Mars, P&G, Philips, Colgate, Palmolive, and Perfetti. I don't even know who they are. I know the top 9 very well. And if I were the brand management, if I were in the reputation management, because they do have those offices, these are things that they need to get ahead of. These are things that they need to be proactively moving away from and be able to say, hey, you're right. This was a problem for us. We are a contributor to this, and we're going to make a change. So this is about change, Jeff Jacobs, and your conversation was part of the catalyst, I think.
Well, I hope so. I mean, I truly think it is, whether you are, there's the financial institutions that are, supporting these manufacturers that are creating the polymers that ultimately become single-use plastics. I mean, every part of that chain, honestly, we're having a discussion this afternoon, my wife and I, with our financial institution, because in some research I did for an article 2 weeks ago, I found that they had put, $2.9 billion worth of investments into the polymers that become single-use plastic. It's like, I'm sorry, I really don't want to have my money invested that way. So
Wow.
at the tiny, tiny little way that we can make a difference, we're having that discussion personally today. That's
impressive. This is a man who walks the walk, Jeff Solomon.
Yeah, and I'm glad you're going to pull some of your billions out of there, so it doesn't...
I noticed, I emphasize and underline in some small way, please.
Hey, but it's those small but impactful decisions, and people listening today heard that, and they will be inspired, and they may have never even thought of that, even in a small way, because that is how the biggest changes happen, is the collective small becomes mighty when it's amplified through thousands of people making those small steps together. So nothing could be more inspiring. This fight against plastic, it's come up several times on our show, Jeff. We've talked to the good folks at All Made. We've talked to some of the brands. I mean, think about it. It's not just, Jeff Jacobs is carrying part of this, call it the banner, the standard, but other brands in our industry are really trying to step up too.
And I'm so glad you mentioned All Made, and I purposely wore one of my All Made shirts that has those plastic bottles as part of the materials. It's responsibly sourced and eco-friendly and super comfortable. All Made is truly one of my favorite products I pull out of the closet or the drawer. And but yeah, we need to be thinking about these brands. You brought up so many great points. I was actually at my cigar club last week, and a guy is wearing, it was like a really nice looking Tommy Bahama shirt. And he goes, yeah, like this shirt's like 30 years old. I pulled it out of the closet and it looked like brand new. Now, I don't know how Tommy Bahama's making them in some third world country, but it was a high end, gorgeous shirt. And I don't think they make stuff like this anymore. It's all like, well, and it's the same way when you buy a nicer, whether it's, Patagonia, I think we paid too damn much for the logo or whatever, but I do think it is more responsibly, sourced than other items. But some of the stuff's really high quality and it will last. And there's a difference between fast fashion. And if, since Brandon hasn't pulled the hook, I wanted to ask the question for those, who don't really get what the term fast fashion is. I mean, that's a thing.
Well, so, you look at retailers like H&M, for example, the clothing, and look at the price point, look at the quality. I mean, it is headed to a market that used to be a niche market that now has become really a mainstream market that is very interested in having a very short season of product, so that the end of life cycle comes way too soon. So it's something that's worn 2 or 3 times. It doesn't wash well. A lot of microplastics probably are coming off in the wash cycle, but it's because people lose, their attention span for that clothing is very short. So they wear it 2 or 3 times. It's almost disposable. It's priced low. It was bought at a point where the product was undervalued. And so from that standpoint, that's simply going into the landfill ahead of product that would have been more responsibly sourced, worn longer, and perhaps not thrown away at all.
Right. Right. Good point.
This
Yeah,
is why I should tell my wife I just need to go out and buy all high-end stuff. Although, we're big she's a big hiker. We do all the REI, which is, if you know REI, nothing's cheap in there. But I think most of the stuff's responsibly sourced. But anyway, that's another story. Brandon's back with our hook and some comments.
Actually, so we've got a request from Ellie on the comment section. Jay, can you put that book back up on the screen? She would like to make sure that gets into her rotation.
Yes, I can.
As Jay is putting that up, I'd like to read something that Alan Letson put in here. He said, I think that making the shift to more sustainable promo products can not only make a difference, but create a stronger relationship with your client by selling quality, lasting products. So I think that was a really nice way for one of our viewers to kind of wrap up his thoughts on what we were talking about today. And Ellie, hopefully you saw that book up there. Obviously, it will be replayed as soon as we are done here. But guys, any final thoughts? Any final things you want to say to our amazing listeners out there before we grab the bite of this taco?
Yeah, I just want to say thanks again to Jeff Jacobs for, helping us get ourselves mentally prepared for this topic, for sending me so many great resources. He sent me way more than this. And I was thinking, we're never going to have a half-hour show if I share all of this good stuff. But it's such an important conversation. I'm grateful for people like Jeff Jacobs because it's coming up more often and due to his inspiration and his efforts. So tip of the cap, my friend, to you. Can't wait to see you in person to share a taco or some other fun something. And so just again, thanks. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. It's been awesome, and we look forward to sharing, more of this type of content ahead on, just multiple platforms. So, it's
thanks
so
both. Oh, sorry, Jeff. Thanks both of you for having me. Thanks, Brandon. And if I can just kind of tie it up again, I just hope people think in terms of, you're trying to do the right thing for yourself. You're trying to do the right thing for your client. You're trying to do the right thing for the world. It just makes such positive sense if you internalize it and say, look, I can make these small changes personally, buying more responsibly sourced products that last longer. Let's cut way back on the single-use plastic. There's lots of ways to do that. But in the end, it's simply doing the right thing, and it feels really good for you and for your client and for where we live. So I just think it feels good.
That is awesome. I think that is a great way to segue into a little tacos up and grab a bite while I am going to go ahead and give thanks to all of our viewers today. Thank you so much for Alan Letson and Ellie for jumping in on the comment section. You guys are always fantastic. And thank you so much for the people that are out there liking and sharing this content. That is how we grow this show. That is how we grow all this amazing content and spread the word that microplastics and single-use plastics need to be a thing of the past. So thank you so much to Rich, Graham, and Catherine Kaufman for getting out there and liking that stuff as well. And to all the people that liked all of our shared stuff out there too, Melissa Newman and everybody else over on the Promotional Products Professionals page, thank you so much for checking out this show. It is live on the 2nd and 4th Tuesdays of the month. And then on those other Tuesdays, it is on freepromotips.com. So please make sure that you go over there and check out more episodes of Tacos. But that is going to do it for us today. We will see you in 2 Tuesdays for some more tacos.